Renaissance season, and it became very, very apparent at ETH Denver, of all places. I spent the week over there. Also, Yago came through. We hung out at the Bob Build on Bitcoin Hacker House. Lots of excited devs there, grinding and building new things for Bob, which you'll learn a bit about pretty soon. So let's kick this off with the agenda. We're going to talk staking rewards. We're going to talk Sovereign on Bob and the POWA token and points campaign. So let's start with Yago on staking rewards.
Hello, everyone. As Ingemar says, I just got back from Denver. It was packed. And for what was really interesting was, as an Ethereum conference, there was just a huge amount of interest in the growing Bitcoin ecosystem. I'm going to go through the staking rewards quickly because we've got a lot to cover today. So if we can go into the next slide. As a quick reminder, I put forward a proposal for us to introduce a SIP to reintroduce locked SOV rewards for stakers. The reasoning was that we will be expanding, likely very soon, onto additional chains. Today we'll hear more about one chain that is proposing that we join them, and which I think we will have a SIP around soon. So Bob today will be presenting their work and the opportunity for Sovereign there. And so this is why the staking rewards are relevant. There were additional things that we discussed around Bitcoin OS. I won't go into that. Anyone who's interested in that can see the conversation in the forum or the last community call. If we can go into the next slide. But I will give a quick reminder. The idea is that stakers on Rootstock will begin to earn SOV. SOV rewards on Rootstock will be equal or higher than anywhere else. This will equalize staking on Rootstock with other staking opportunities as they arise. Staking will start at 9% for max stakers. Rewards will be non-transferable until the expected reissuance of SOV into Bitcoin OS. And when the reissuance occurs, the earned SOV will be liquid, and no other SOV tokens will be liquid earlier. Now, a quick update on this. The SIP codebase is ready for review and will be available on the forum, I think even today. So I'd request that we all take a look at that, and anyone who has the chops to review it can do so. It's very similar to the codebase that we used in SIP24, so there's very little new there, but the opportunity to review is there, and that once reviewed would allow us to go live with the SIP later this month. All right, so that was a little bit of housekeeping, and with that I'd like to introduce Alexei. So Alexei is someone who I've known for quite a few years now. He's been deeply dedicated to building on Bitcoin and trying to expand the Bitcoin ecosystem. And like us, he had to figure out how he was going to try and do that in an environment in which it was difficult from the perspective of the technologies that were available, as well as the overall Bitcoin culture. Alexei built a very interesting project, and he, with the team that he was building with, they built Interlay, which was based on his academic work, which in and of itself was impressive and focused on Bitcoin. And so Alexei has a background in cryptography, and they built the Interlay bridge, which became a Bitcoin bridge to the Polkadot ecosystem. He might have some time to tell us some of the experiences and lessons he's learned there. But like us, they were building on an ecosystem which left them somewhat isolated from the rest of the world, and have now taken an approach where what they're looking to do is to bring Bitcoin into the Ethereum ecosystem, and in so doing, bring the Ethereum ecosystem into Bitcoin. And with that, I'd like to give the stage to Alexei.
Well, thank you so much. That was a very kind introduction, and yeah, definitely lots of pressure now to actually live up to the expectations. So yeah, hey everyone, I'm Alexei. I'm one of the two co-founders of Intellay and also now Bob. As Izzy mentioned, our vision has always been to unlock more use cases for Bitcoin. Bitcoin has over 300 million users. It's growing faster than the internet. 90% of people who get into crypto start with Bitcoin. But unfortunately, over the last 10 years, they've been forced to leave. And we've all experienced the challenges within the Bitcoin ecosystem, where a lot of the core, or I would say maybe Laser and Maxi community, have rejected everything that is not directly built on Bitcoin, whether it was sidechains or other networks. And with the launch of ordinals, I think we've entered the Bitcoin renaissance. Ordinals can be compared to Ethereum's CryptoKitty moment. We have a new community coming into the ecosystem. People in the ordinals and BUC and Runes community are not Bitcoin maxis. They're people who have worked and basically built on other ecosystems, but are Bitcoiners at heart and are all super excited to start building on Bitcoin again. And our mission with Bob is to bring innovation back to Bitcoin by creating rollups around the Bitcoin ecosystem, using Bitcoin for security, settlement, and custody, and unlocking new use cases. So if we maybe just move on to the next slide, and I can give a more detailed explanation of why we're doing Bob and which approaches we're taking. So one of the things we learned the hard way is that when building a Bitcoin ecosystem, Bitcoin layer 2, there are three main challenges that we'll need to solve. The Bitcoin problem, which is how do we get Bitcoin trustlessly or as trust minimized as possible into the layer 2? And at the same time, how do we inherit Bitcoin security? How do we align with the Bitcoin ethos? How do we also give back to the Bitcoin layer 1 and contribute to the long-term sustainability of this ecosystem that is the backbone of the entire crypto industry? But then there's two others that are often overlooked, and that is the ecosystem problem and the liquidity problem. Ecosystem problem means that, well, we need to create an ecosystem that allows for innovation to flourish, that allows builders like you to start building right from day one, to give you the tools that you need to go to market fast, to attract users. And I'm speaking about developer experience, user experience, wallets, RPC nodes, even things like that, data analytics, oracles. And one thing we've learned the hard way building on a non-EVM ecosystem is that if you have to do that all from scratch, you're only playing catch up. And this is why Bob features the Ethereum virtual machine as its main programming paradigm. And of course, in the future, we might expand that. But right now, we believe that this is the best way to go to market fast and get builders from Ethereum to start building. And then last but not least, and often most overlooked across all Web3 communities, is liquidity. Think about it this way. Even if we have the most trustless Bitcoin bridge and we'll have all the tools we need to build, if you bridge Bitcoin and you can't do anything with it because there are no other assets, then it's very difficult to create a flourishing and booming DeFi ecosystem. And we've seen on the global market, on the global arena, that people want stablecoins. People need stablecoins. This is what we need to do to bank the unbanked. And that's why on Bob, we focus on making access to liquidity very easy, making on and off ramps very easy, and ensuring that we don't rely on big centralized providers for our success. I had the pleasure or the experience to be part of Polkadot's journey to bring stablecoins on and to Polkadot natively, namely USDT and USDC. That took 2.5 years. Together with Intellay, we brought Banksa to 30 parachain projects, and that took us a year because Polkadot is isolated, just like many other ecosystems. If we could go to the next slide. And that's why with Bob, we're taking a somewhat radical approach, but we need to be radical to ensure innovation. We're building Bob as a rollup that is secured by Bitcoin and integrated with the Bitcoin stack, right? We need to be supportive of Lightning, nodes or ordinals, BRCs, peer-to-peer swaps. Everything that has been built on Bitcoin for the last 15 years, we cannot ignore and reject that. We need to be supportive, we need to integrate, we need to expand and innovate on that front. But at the same time, we need to accept that Ethereum's innovation is very powerful and allows us to just be ahead of everybody else. We don't need to start from zero. We can start from where Ethereum has gotten to and then overtake it from there. And that's why Bob uses the EVM as his program paradigm. And at the same time, we also support rolling up to Ethereum to leverage Ethereum to onboard users and liquidity. And if next slide, please. In the first step, our mission is to get the millions of Ethereum users, the 30 million MetaMask users, to start using Bitcoin. Right now is Bitcoin season. We've all been working on this for so long. We know what Bitcoin can do. And now the Ethereum and Solana and Avalanche and Polkadot and Cosmos ecosystems know too. They're excited. They want to get involved. And Bob's mission is to make it super easy for them to get started. Avoid them or prevent them or don't force them to have this steep learning curve of learning about UTXOs and all the Bitcoin scripting. Let them build using EVM. Let them build within an ecosystem that they're familiar with and make it super easy for them to onboard liquidity. Think USDT, USDC, DAI, Frax, USDN, whatever stablecoin you want, they're all available on Ethereum. By connecting to ETH, we can allow these users to one-click deploy liquidity into Bob. And at the same time, we're only 2 clicks away from every single major exchange. We don't need to ask Binance to support Bob natively. Of course, we're in touch with all the big exchanges, but that's only a user enhancement. Because we're connected to Ethereum, every user can withdraw from Coinbase, Binance, OKX, custodians, on and off ramps to ETH and then to Bob within 2 clicks. And we can enhance the user experience without relying on centralized providers. And as we've all seen in the past, this is super important. Now, I'll walk you through how this works in a bit more detail. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as any ETH rollup, Bob has sequencers. Bob sequencers collect transactions, they sequence blocks, they post data to Ethereum, and that is how this is finalized. And this is also how we get the native L1, L2 bridge, just like you see on Optimism, on Coinbase, on the base chain, and so on. But at the same time, we provide tooling and infrastructure for EVM builders to interact with the Bitcoin chain. We have a Bitcoin Light client built into Bob that allows you to verify every single Bitcoin transaction. And you can do peer-to-peer swaps, you can do cross-chain ordinals auctions. And in fact, this is a bit of an alpha leak, we've also built a MetaMask integration that allows 30 million MetaMask users to now use ordinals, BRCs, runes directly from the MetaMask wallet. And for bridging, we use TBTC and WBTC. WBTC is the largest Bitcoin wrapped asset in the space. Yes, it is centralized, but it also is robust. And this is one way to onboard more Bitcoin liquidity, get them from Ethereum into Bob. And at the same time as our main trust minimized bridge, we use TBTC. TBTC is based on a threshold signature scheme. They have 100 signers, of which the majority needs to be honest. And this allows us to have a very low kind of risk of the bridge being corrupted. So of course, Bitcoin bridges, most of them rely on multi-sig designs. This is a very robust multi-sig design because it enables us to have many different signers. And on top of this, and this is something that we've researched before and designed before, we are working on adding collateral models. So think of it this way. When you use TBTC, you can decide that you're okay in trusting this big threshold signature scheme where there's 100 signers, but you might also be concerned. And if you're concerned and conservative, we will allow you to purchase insurance. You'll be able to underwrite or have somebody underwrite the risk. And this will be us, the TBTC DAO ideally, but also third-party liquidity providers that will allow you to purchase insurance. And this will look and feel like buying insurance for a rented car. If you want 10% coverage, 50% coverage, this is something that we want to offer so more conservative Bitcoin holders can gain confidence because they will know that even if the bridge breaks, they will get paid out in stablecoins and other assets. Next slide, please. Now in phase 2 is where it gets really interesting. As I mentioned, Bitcoin alignment and Bitcoin security are a critical part of any Bitcoin layer 2. And Sovereign has been live on RSK and has embraced this narrative and this ethos of basically leveraging Bitcoin's proof of work security. Well, with Bob, we have designed a new type of merged mining that allows us to introduce merged mining to any rollup, whether it's a Bitcoin or ETH rollup. And we do this in a way that allows us to keep 2-second block times and 2000 TPS while still inheriting security from Bitcoin miners. Next slide, please. And then when we do this is we add merge mining to the rollup. So if you think of, again, in the rollup space, you have the sequencers sequencing blocks, building blocks every 2 seconds. Now, every 100 or 200 blocks, and this can be varied every few minutes, the Bitcoin miners include a commitment to the state of the rollup. So the Bitcoin miners validate the rollup. They check that the rollup state is correct, that the sequencer is not misbehaving, and then they will include the checkpoint to all these blocks into their mining process. And I think the big difference here, because you're all, of course, very familiar with merge mining, the difference between merge mining on RSK and merge mining on Bob is that on Rootstock, every single block needs to have proof of work. And on Bob, we make the trade-off of user experience and speed. So you have proof of work over 100 blocks. So yes, of course, it could be the case that there's 100 blocks that had some bad data in it and we need to recover from that. But ultimately, this is how all rollups work. And by embracing this, we can basically give users this Web 2 user experience, which we have to do, because if you look at the ETH rollups, they all have 2-second or low or faster block times. We cannot compete with them if we cannot match the user experience. And this way, we have Bitcoin proof of work over the rollup. And then on the ETH L1 contract, we require this proof of work to be valid. So Ethereum will also check that the data is there, that there is no challenge, but also that the miners have approved of the rollup state. And this gives us all sorts of security benefits. It actually can make Arbitrum and Optimism rollups even more secure because it gives us much more confidence about the correctness of the rollup. In an optimistic rollup case, you often have to wait 7 days before you know that everything is fine, because that's how long people can challenge the sequencer. With this approach, we now know within a few minutes that there is a very low chance that the rollup is corrupted, because now to attack the rollup, you need to attack the sequencer and the majority of the merge miners. And this, I think, is a very interesting and very robust model to bring Bitcoin security. But now it still does not yet give us the native layer 1, layer 2 bridge. It still will use TBTC, WBTC, and collateralized bridge models where you have insurance on top. Next slide, please. Now, as you all have heard, of course, BitVM is the new big thing. We were all super excited and hoping that BitVM will finally bring rollups directly to Bitcoin. And of course, we're working on BitVM. I'm personally trying to help Robin with a technical write-up of how the BitVM bridge will work. And I know there's other teams that are actively working on bridge designs. And I'm very confident that within a year, we will have the first designs that can be used, at least for early tests and production. Now, what Bob will do, and if we can move to the next slide, please, we will move the fraud-proof logic from Ethereum to Bitcoin. And that's ultimately what BitVM allows us to do. BitVM allows us to do fraud proofs directly on the Bitcoin chain, enforced by all Bitcoin full nodes. So instead of, as in the first 2 phases, you leveraging Ethereum for settlement and security, we will migrate, once BitVM is ready, we will migrate the settlement and security to Bitcoin. And what this gives us is 2 things. First of all, now Bitcoin users are sure that they only need to trust Bitcoin and not Ethereum, which I think is also a big selling point and a very important point to make to the majority of the Bitcoin holders. But at the same time, we get an almost native L1, L2 bridge using BitVM, because the Bob sequencers will then run BitVM and they will be responsible for bridging in Bitcoin and other assets in the future. And as long as one of these operators is honest, the system is secure. But the question, of course, is, well, how do we make sure that Ethereum is still involved in this? Because ultimately, we do not want to cut off our ties to Ethereum. Ethereum ecosystem is big, it's innovative, the users love Bitcoin, and we have all the stablecoins and other blue chip assets on Ethereum. So to ensure that we still have the native L1, L2 bridge, what we do is we relay fraud proofs from Bitcoin to Ethereum. The benefit of Ethereum smart contract paradigm is that we can verify fraud proofs that happened on Bitcoin. So if something goes wrong and we have a fraud proof on Bitcoin, we can relay this to Ethereum and ensure that we react to this on the Ethereum side. So what we get, is a hybrid rollup that ensures that Bitcoin assets are secured by Bitcoin, but at the same time gives ETH users the guarantee that their assets are still enforced, is secured by Ethereum, and that they can exit back to Ethereum if something goes wrong. And this, we believe, allows us to embrace both the Bitcoin's ecosystem and the global adoption of Bitcoin and the asset, as well as the Ethereum innovation space and the millions of users that are using Ethereum every single day. Next slide, please. And then, of course, in the future, and you have probably heard many teams announcing ZK rollups. I think it's very important to state that ZK rollups do not yet exist. They do not yet exist on Bitcoin. We do not yet know how to enforce and brute force a ZK verifier into Bitcoin script. With very high probability, we need a fork in Bitcoin to achieve this. And until this happens, optimistic rollups on Bitcoin, or specifically BitVM rollups, are the best design that we can get. And our goal and our mission at Bob is to build a community of millions of users to show and prove that, yes, Bitcoin rollups can succeed. They will essentially become the biggest L2 ecosystem, bigger than Ethereum's, and then push for the necessary minor code changes to Bitcoin to make bridging even more secure. But when we are in that stage, we have millions of users, billions in TVL, and there's all the reason to request a change, as opposed to fighting right now where we have not yet validated and proved to the Bitcoin core community that, yes, indeed, Bitcoin sidechains can really grow beyond Ethereum's ecosystem. Next, please. So in summary, Bob is a Bitcoin L2. It's an Ethereum 2. It's a hybrid layer 2. Next slide. And it's launching at the Bitcoin halving. So we are in the final stages of launch preparations. You'll see quite some exciting things coming out over the next 3 weeks, which will include some warm-up phases and so on. I cannot say too much yet, but I believe that we are on track to really ride or essentially push the Bitcoin renaissance even further and kick off Bitcoin season 2 and ensure that Bitcoin rollups become bigger and stronger than ETH rollups. And just to kind of give you a taste of the potential of this market, Ethereum rollups have a $100 billion market right now, whereas ETH is at $350 billion. Bitcoin is a $1 trillion market. And all the L2s we have right now sit around, $5-6 billion. If we assume that Bitcoin layer 2s are even only as close as successful to ETH L2s, this is a multi-billion dollar market that will activate Bitcoin that has been held in cold storage and basically was being dormant over the last years, and finally bring innovation back to Bitcoin. And why we're so excited to be here today is because Sovereign as a community has been spearheading DeFi on Bitcoin. You've managed to build a strong community, to build TVL, to build use cases throughout the bear market, even before everybody else from other ecosystems woke up to Bitcoin. You are the OGs, and we really would love to work with you to make Bitcoin great again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alexei. I will also give a short presentation with regards to Bob, and then I think we should open it up to questions. So if we could
Okay. Back to the slideshow.
slide. Yes, right. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to Bob are going to be presenting a SIP shortly to propose to our community and to propose that Sovereign launch on Bob. In some context, this is not coming out of the blue. Alexei and I have been talking for a long time, and I personally have become persuaded that this is an excellent idea for Bob, it's an excellent idea for Sovereign, and an excellent idea for Bitcoin. And I'll give a few words on what that is, on what that reasoning is, and then we can jump into questions. So can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So one of actually not one of my favorite Satoshi quote is Bitcoin allows us to conquer new territories for freedom. And right now we're in the process of seeing a massive expansion of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ecosystem. But it's happening in two very different ways. As you can see, I've sort of split it into two worlds. On the left, we have bringing new people into Bitcoin. And that's being done right now primarily through centralized means, ETFs, centralized exchanges, institutional participants. To a great extent, that is what is driving the market right now. But there's another way of expanding Bitcoin, and that is to expand Bitcoin into realms where we either conquer new territories for freedom, conquer new territories for Bitcoin by conquering them from ETH, conquering them from degens and bringing them the gospel of sound money, or deepening the relationship that hodlers have with their Bitcoin, allowing them to do more with their Bitcoin, to earn on their Bitcoin, to have Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, and to make sure that they never have to sell their Bitcoin because they can borrow against their Bitcoin. Next slide, please. So when it no.
Sorry.
So when we talk about conquering new territories, not for freedom, but specifically for Bitcoin, where I see sovereign playing the most important role is this focus on being able to bring people right now that we're in a bull market, bring people from ETH, bring people from the altcoin world, bring people from the degen world into the world, not just of sound money, but also of sovereign's sound finance. We have built tools, and most of our community are people who started out as hodlers. And the reason I am excited about Sovereign is because as a hodler myself, it gives me the ability to put my Bitcoin to work in a way that I would never consider doing through a centralized system. And so for us as hodlers and as sort of like the hardcore OG Sovereign community, we are hodlers who have deepened our relationship with Bitcoin. But in terms of what we can contribute, not to ourselves, but rather to Bitcoin, it is bringing the liquidity, the users, the mind share that has been developing outside of Bitcoin into Bitcoin. Next slide, please. And I also think that that is going to be the primary way that we are going to grow Sovereign exponentially over the course of what is very clearly now a bull market. And so I'd like to introduce an idea which I call Operation Homecoming, which is that Sovereign should place as a central and fundamental mission, bringing people from ETH, from the wider crypto world back home, back to Bitcoin, bringing, sometimes we call them altcoiners, but I'm going to call them slush coiners because their funds slush back and forth between narratives on a day-to-day basis, right? We need to give them solid foundations. There is only one narrative, and it's Bitcoin, right? And so our goal is to bring their liquidity, the trade volume, the active users, and the early adopters to Bitcoin. And what I think the combination of Bob and Sovereign do is it provides the bridge, it provides the conduit to bring those users and their funds back to Bitcoin. By attaching itself and growing out of Ethereum, I think Bob is the perfect match for Sovereign, which has grown out of Bitcoin. And together, I think we can hybridize and create that bridge. Next slide, please. When I was at university, I took a course in finance. I only took one. But the very first lesson, the professor started out by saying the only thing you need to know about finance is that what it basically comes down to is what you're trying to do is find a river of money and stand in the middle of it, right? The very definition of a middleman. Usually a middleman does not produce value. But I think that we have an opportunity here to find, or more accurately, create a river of money, the river of money that will flow from the wider crypto universe and specifically Ethereum into Bitcoin, for us to stand in the middle of it, and as opposed to finance, to actually create value in doing so. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions.
Hey guys, I have some questions. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
David. And guys,
Yeah,
when you ask a question, if you can just say your name before so we know who we're talking to.
Yep. This is David Seroy. Alexi, thanks for kind of all your contributions. Love everything that you do. I just want to get a better overview of the kind of architecture of Bob. I mean, functionally, it is just Ethereum, L2, right? You're doing the execution off chain. You're posting the data onto Ethereum L1, and then you're using kind of like TBTC or whatever to kind of bridge the Bitcoin in. Like that functionally can, I think, stand alone. I don't understand why you need like the merge mining aspect as well. Like I've read the white paper, it's very cool. I get it. It kind of adds like some semblance of Bitcoin security, but it's not really necessary, is it? So that's my first question.
So, I mean, what is necessary? I mean, I think in practice, we can agree that Ethereum is robust as today, right? It's securing billions of dollars in value. And we can debate with the upcoming kind of designs whether it's robust enough. Like with restaking and rehypothecation, it's cool, but it's also risky. And I think still, like the one thing that we know that works, also from academia, we know that Bitcoin works. Like it took academia 10 years to really verify yet that Komodo consensus proof of work is actually secure. With proof of stake, like we're still learning. I mean, you can describe Bitcoin's consensus in one sentence, but you cannot describe Ethereum's consensus like in a sentence, in 500 sentences. It's still proof of stake is super new. Now, taking a step back, why do we even care about introducing merge mining? Well, because merge mining gives us three things. One, it gives us Bitcoin proof of work security. It gives us the security of proof of work on Bitcoin, which means that it makes the system more robust. Why does Rootstock merge miner not use its own consensus? Because proof of work is still the most secure consensus system that we know of. Now, the second reason is it actually makes ETH rollups more secure, because in an optimistic rollup, you need to wait 7 days for finalization. That's bad. That's not great, right? I mean, 7 days waiting where if the sequencer does something bad, and that's why Ethereum is really pushing towards decentralized and shared sequencers, because sequencers still are a bottleneck. And that's a trade-off that every layer 2 makes, or that's the definition of a layer 2. It's a trade-off. You go off-chain, you get all the benefits, but there is a security trade-off. Well, by adding in merge mining, we have much more confidence about the security of the sequencer. So look at Arbitrum, for example. So Arbitrum has fraud proofs, right? So now if the sequencer misbehaves, there are 7 days challenge period. So normally, I agree, normally the challenge will happen instantly and everything goes right. But what if it's unclear? What if there's a delay? For a user, you need to wait for 7 days to know that your assets are actually finalized. Well, if we add Bitcoin proof of work on this, the way we do this with Bob, and the protocol is called Optimine, within minutes, within an hour, there's very little chance that this will ever be forked. Because now, to attack the rollup, you not only need to attack the sequencer, or the sequencer, if the sequencer is attacking, they also need to control the majority of the merge mining hash rate. And you've all seen the announcements of some of the biggest miners in the space, they're all looking at layer 2s. They are embracing innovation. They see the need for layer 2s. And this is now our chance to get them more than 60, 70, 80% of the Bitcoin hash rate and higher to secure rollups like Bob. And now, as a sequencer, if you want to really attack the system, you have to corrupt the miners. And we know that that's not possible. And that is exactly what the merge mining aspect gives us. And then in the final step, and that's point 3, with BitVM, it becomes much more secure to verify and much easier, because now we can use the longest chain of signed by the sequencer and basically merge mined by miners is the longest chain in our consensus protocol. And that is what we then use to verify in BitVM. So there is a lot of technical reasoning behind introducing merge mining, and it gives us the option to detach from Ethereum consensus, which we then do once BitVM is introduced, because in phase 3, Ethereum is merely used as bridge. We basically use this contract on Ethereum that reads the Bitcoin and checks if there was a fraud proof, only to give security to ETH users. Right now, if you think in phase 1, a Bitcoin user trusts that Ethereum is secure. In phase 2, you trust that, well, yes, Ethereum is secure, but also now I have merge mining. So it's kind of, I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin is secure. So you have the same trust assumption as Rootstock, more or less. And on top, with BitVM in phase 3, then suddenly for the Bitcoin user, you only trust Bitcoin. And then the Ethereum user will trust Bitcoin. But then you still want to give the ETH user the chance to get back and take their assets out. And that's why you still have the Ethereum connection.
Got it. Okay, I think that makes more sense. And then my other question is, you kind of talked a lot about like inheriting the network effects of Ethereum, and we understand that it's EVM, and all the apps and everything are built under EVM. But I think one of the problems that we experienced on Rootstock is like that same narrative was pitched, but in actuality, a lot of the kind of partnerships didn't actually exist, right? Like maybe the oracles were lacking, or the data indexers, or all of this different like tooling. Like it's one thing for it to exist and be compatible with EVM. It's a whole different thing for all of these exchanges and partners to actually take the time and invest dev resources to making those integrations happen. And I'm curious if you could speak to maybe like some of the other partnerships or integrations that you guys have already built out. Like how far along is that process, which is different than just having EVM compatibility? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the reason why we are hybrid. I think there's two things that are different now. One, it's the timing. I mean, David, I'm not sure if you had the chance to come to Denver, but we were hosting Bitcoin Renaissance together at Babylon, which had 1.5 thousand people sign up. It was the biggest side event of all of ETH Denver. We had hundreds of Bitcoin DeFi projects join in and approach Bob and other Bitcoin teams about deploying. And I think as we get closer to launch over the next couple of weeks, you'll see how much interest there is right now in terms of narrative and teams actually coming back to Bitcoin. Think of it from, and that's basically, I'm just quoting back what we hear when we talk to the big DeFi projects across L2s and Ethereum. For them, when they have to decide to which L2 they go next, they can have to pick currently from 40 Ethereum L2s that basically all do the same thing. Sure, one might have some Nuziki primitives, but they're all generalized ETH L2s that are fighting for the same user base and offer the same products and tools. Well, Bob focuses on one niche, Bitcoin. We give all of these DeFi projects and infrastructure teams and product teams and NFT teams on Ethereum access to a new community, Bitcoiners. And that's what they really want to see. Like we're talking to some of the biggest NFT marketplaces. We're talking to some of the biggest consumer dApps on EVM chains that want to come to Bitcoin. And their only way to do that is through something like Bob, because it has EVM, but it's also connected to Ethereum, which allows their users to switch back and forth and just without having to use third-party bridges. And I think that was also, and that's the second point, that's the other missing link. We don't need custom integrations for the majority of this infrastructure. As mentioned, right, because we're connected to Ethereum, we have access to all of the exchanges, to all of the stablecoins, all of the assets. Yes, a wormhole bridge is great, and we know the team very well, and Layer 0 and Axelar. But ultimately, having them deploy directly to Bob is only an improved user experience, because you have all of these things on Ethereum. And that is why this hybrid positioning is so important. We remove the dependency on third-party providers for the success of Bob and this hybrid Bitcoin ecosystem. And I think that is one of the lessons we've learned from building on Polkadot, but also I think from Rootstock and Stacks. That I think is something that not many teams have yet seen, but it's going to make a big difference.
I'd like to add my perspective to that. One of the things that I think give Bob a huge advantage is not just the fact that they're building on Ethereum, and as a roll-up to Ethereum, they will inherit a lot of the Ethereum ecosystem, but also that they're using the OP stack. And the OP stack itself is integrated with so much in terms of on-ramps and off-ramps, wallets, block explorers, and some degree of composability with other roll-ups within the OP stack, that it provides a huge ecosystem far beyond what we've seen develop on Rootstock. Now, for the last 3 years, we've been building on Rootstock, and that has represented something of a glass ceiling to the degree to which we are able to expand. we've encountered this in so many ways, right? We've had to build out our own data services because the block explorers were not adequate. We had to build out our own node service and our own RPC because that infrastructure wasn't available. We had to build out our own bridges because that infrastructure wasn't available. As a project, we've had to build out huge amounts of infrastructure, and that has allowed us to expand, but we cannot build out everything. Our bridges are not integrated with as many chains or with as much functionality as other chains. We do not have access to many of the oracles that people are looking to use. There's a huge problem for users to onboard and offboard into rootstock, and as a result into Sovereign. And in parallel, we've built out a magnificent suite of DeFi applications, which, in my view, are not able to be used by the and be of benefit to the number of users that they could potentially be of use for. Now, I'll give a very specific example. One thing which I haven't mentioned is that we are in the process of a major overhaul and upgrade of Sovereign's DEX. The upgrade that we're working on will be vastly more gas efficient, even than Uniswap. It will allow for the combination of regular AMM pools with concentrated AMM pools with limit orders. It will revolutionize our ability to offer the margin trading product that we have, but right now doesn't function at the level that we would like it to function. Has an SDK and an API integrated, and many, many, many more things. One of the biggest parts of the upgrade will be much better routing, which will allow us to introduce pools across effectively any kind of asset. For example, we'll be able to have optimized stablecoin to stablecoin pools, or pools that are paired against things which are not BTC or not sovereign dollar. Going through that process on rootstock is in some degree a theoretical exercise, because that in and of itself is not going to bring new users. But being able to expose a large number of users to that type of DEX is very powerful. And we can do it more easily on Bob. Beyond that, if we are on Bob, it's actually much easier in a new deployment for us to deploy what is going to be experimental to Bob, and it is easier to deploy de novo than it is to go and refactor our entire code base on rootstock with this and to reintegrate the new DEX. And so we're racing to get this work done, this new DEX 2.0, integrated and ready for production in time for Bob to go live. And having done that, we'll be able to expose it to a large number of users that otherwise we wouldn't be able to expose it to. And it will also provide us an opportunity to see it in the wild before making the major investment of retroactively upgrading the rootstock DEX. So I think there's a huge opportunity here for the pooling, the ecosystem and the suite of dApps that we've built with Sovereign to expand now to reach an audience that otherwise would be very difficult for us to put these tools in their hands.
And Iago, so is the plan kind of in the immediate or long term to kind of bridge assets that have been built on RSK like Sovereign Dollar over to Bob, or to completely redeploy contracts like Zero onto Bob? And if it's the latter, I mean, I obviously won't hold to any like timeframes, but is this a process that takes months or years? Like, maybe some clarity on that.
The expectation right now is that we won't launch with the full suite of Sovereign dApps on day one. Our goal is to launch with Bitocracy, with staking, and with DEX 2.0. Then to introduce lending, and with the introduction of lending, to introduce margin trading, and then to introduce mint and zero. At the same time, Babelfish are planning or looking into a deployment on Bob as well, and some of the other projects on Rootstock as well. How long it will take, we don't have this mapped out. We're talking months, but I don't think that many months. What we want to see is we want to see the success on Bob, so that we have the business justification to make the investment. But the investment is not that huge. We've looked at it a lot. We've asked this question of ourselves over the last several months. How much additional labor is this going to entail? How much additional maintenance is this going to entail? To what degree is this going to be an additional drag on our resources? And our conclusion is that while there will be an increase in maintenance costs and deployment costs around this process, they are very manageable, even within with the team and the resources that we have right now. And so it's effectively a doubling, or I suspect substantially more than a doubling, of what we're able to do with the same investment and the same team and resources that we have at the moment. Now, one question that you asked was around bridging. I think initially we will want to bridge things like the sovereign dollar over to Bob at some point in the future. And I think because of the complexity of that, that might be the last thing that we add to Bob, is the ability to issue from Bob itself sovereign dollars. That will be a question that we'll have to decide amongst ourselves, whether or not we treat TBTC, for example, as an asset equivalent to RBTC. But just as an example, right? You specifically, David, have been, I think, witness to our absolute, the fight that we've put to bring Layer 0, to bring Wormhole, to bring various bridges to Rootstock, and the attempt to get IOV Labs to take the lead on this, and it hasn't happened. And so the bridging itself will be done over the bridges that we've already constructed. And, thankfully, the first bridge that we constructed was to Ethereum. This is exactly the kind of bottleneck, the kind of glass ceiling that I think we will, at least to a very significant degree, not experience on Bob.
Any other questions before we move on, or should we get to the? We only have 10 minutes left. Maybe we should move on.
All right, then let's go to let's one more question, then we'll go into the next slides.
Okay.
And guys,
Maybe
this may be a little
add-
bit longer than a standard community call, it seems.
Yeah, I'm happy. Also, I mean, I'll try to hang around the Discord. I've actually been a silent listener and follower for a while. And if there's any questions, I know if there's a thread or channel, and I can also just answer there throughout the day, the next 2 days or so.
Alexa, let's organize, if we can, even this week, a Spaces also on Twitter to give an additional opportunity for people to ask questions.
Great.
Sounds
idea.
good. Let's maybe
Maybe a forum thread would be good.
Sorry, John, what was the question?
Sorry, this is John. Maybe a forum thread would be good for async discussion.
Yes, so Bob are planning to put a forum post up as well as a SIP. All right, so then in that case, let's move on then to our next slide. Okay, so one big thing that we haven't had opportunity to, we will be discussing soon in greater detail, is DEX 2.0. Right, sort of a stealth announcement in this call. The other thing, and this is a project that we had named and have been working on for several months now, is what we've been calling the New Bitcoin Token Economy Bridge. The New Bitcoin Token Economy Bridge, or what we've internally been just calling the NBTE, is our intention to, and we've been working with the Rainer's team on this. So Rainer's team are developing the ability for us to bring all of the Bitcoin native tokens to Sovereign and allow for them to be traded and lent and used in all sorts of other ways, as DAOs or DeFi, using our tooling. This is something which will be applicable to Rootstock, any other EVM chain, and specifically to Bob as well, and is an early taste of part of the framework that we're building towards Bitcoin OS. So, to make this real, to promote this, and to bring to light the ability now to start doing way more things with Bitcoin native tokens, we're introducing today a program around the NBTE bridge and a points program for a new token that will be introduced. Next slide, please. Now, this token that we're introducing is nothing like anything we've done before. The gentleman wearing the cool meme sunglasses in the image is Richard Dawkins. When I was in high school, I read his book for the first time, The Selfish Meme. Sorry, The Selfish Gene. In the last chapter of The Selfish Gene, which is the book that made him famous as a biologist, he introduced a new idea to the world, the idea of information that spread between people in the same way that genes spread between biological systems. He called these memes. And, we've seen the spread of ideas, right? These are ideas that self-replicate. So Richard Dawkins is the godfather of memes. Next slide, please. And we tend to think about memes and meme coins, especially within this community, as a pretty stupid idea. Something which doesn't have intrinsic value. I'm going to make an argument here that it's exactly the opposite. What they lack is utilitarian value. The only value that they have, and the value that they very demonstrably have, is intrinsic value, right? Value because they are valued. And I think that one way to think about this is that what we are calling meme coins are effectively idea tokens. And what they are most similar to are forms of consumption that we usually think of as associated with community or entertainment. Now, right now, we're in the middle of a bull market, and we are seeing the narrative, this idea, this meme of a Bitcoin renaissance occurring solely because of meme tokens. And I will admit that I have been, for the most of my experience in Bitcoin, the last 13 or 14 years, very dismissive of meme tokens. But I've been extremely impressed watching what has happened over the last year, where meme tokens, these idea tokens, are actually capable of spreading ideas. The way that they've introduced BRC20s, ordinals have introduced the idea of building on Bitcoin, and the way that things like specifically the quantum cats took a very, very dry idea, right? A concatenate a Bitcoin opcode and made it into something that people were singing songs about or writing stories about, etc. So we're going to be introducing new abilities for Bitcoin native tokens. We're going to be introducing these for new types of Bitcoin tokens, more, to my mind, interesting and more powerful than BRC20s. For example, taproot assets, tap tokens, and runes. And as part of this, I think we should be looking to introduce more fun to these ideas, more fun to Sovereign, and utilize the inherent power of meme tokens to spread ideas and to bring the idea of building on proof of work, building on Bitcoin, bringing this power to the people. Next slide, please. And so we are today introducing, and French Victor will talk about this more, points program around POWA, which will end with, towards the halving, the introduction of the new POWA token, which is a meme coin with meaning. And what its goal is to promote the ideas that we believe in. It's a meme coin which funds the Bitcoin security budget, which uses Bitcoin as its canonical ledger, which grows and should help grow a Bitcoin native economy that supports Bitcoin rollups and promotes Bitcoin OS. So that is its meaning. And with that, I'd like to go over to the next slide and hand the mic over to French Victory.
Thank you very much, Iago. So, like Iago said, we're introducing a points program. It's called POWA Points. We have just before this call, we have tweeted about it on Twitter, and this point will end with an airdrop of a new token, a new Bitcoin native token called POWA, a very powerful token, which is built on an entirely new and yet unreleased Bitcoin technology. Now, this type of token will be more powerful than BRC20s and have more trade and more utility than ordinals. And especially, we're expecting Sovereign to be the leading marketplace for Bitcoin native tokens, and especially this kind of token. Now, we will elaborate on this exact type of technology at a later date. But next slide, please. We are happy to talk about POWA Points, a new program in which you get points for different actions, and at the end of the program you get POWA. Next slide, please. So points in the POWA Points program are given for staking, trending, and influencing, mostly on Twitter. While in staking, existing stakes, new stakes, and restakes get points, and the staking pool and the prize pool for staking is 30% of the POWA pool. There are totals there'll be a total of 1 trillion POWA. In the trading pool, the different kinds of trading activity, and especially importing stable coins, will grant points, and traders will share 20% of the POWA pool. And influencing, since with meme coins, their mimetic qualities are what brings a lot of the value. The influence pools are also what brings will also get 30% of the POWA pool. Now, all of this is live now. You can enter our Twitter or enter our DApp and access the POWA page, the top bar in the DApp. And if you want to share the tweet, then I definitely recommend that you will register in the influence section. Register your Twitter, and then you will get points for sharing the tweet, which will end in an airdrop when the POWA token launches. Next slide, please. Yeah, we are live now. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is for me. I'm open to questions, of course.
Feel free to unmute or type questions in the chat.
I think we can also open questions more generally. What we can do is take 1 or 2 questions, but we're already at 5 p.m. UTC, and so we can then end the recording and allow the conversation to continue.
All right. I'll just close out formally by saying thanks everyone for being a part of this movement, this renaissance. We're making Bitcoin a very rich environment for building applications and creating more sovereign individuals. So thanks everyone. Stay sovereign. We're going to move on to the after hours. So if anybody has questions on the things mentioned in the call, feel free to unmute and ask, or we can check the chat, or if you guys are feeling shy today.
I can read a question from YouTube.